Oh my gosh, y'all, I am so sorry. I was looking at this I was looking at the preview of the stream and I thought we were live, and we were not. I started the live stream at 1:30 on the dot. I was only just waiting for people to filter in. So luckily, didn't miss anything. Thank y'all so much for stopping in and not bouncing when you saw the stream wasn't live. Totally my bad. Now I know if I'm seeing the live preview in the YouTube studio, there's also a button I need to click. First time I missed hitting that. Hello, everyone! Welcome into the stream. Luckily, I was just stalling. I was just saying hello to everyone, so we didn't do anything too technical yet. But welcome in. So good to see everyone in here. Yeah, I was just saying, so many people tuning in. We have someone from Kenya, we have Tulsa, we have Austin, we got Hungary in here, we have 2 people from Toronto, San Francisco. So great. Thanks, everyone, again. Yeah, can you share what the error was? Absolutely. We're going to try to get some engineers in here to answer all of your questions as soon as you have them. Now I'm just trying to remember everything I said in the past 5 minutes. So this stream is going to be about ambient agents. We're going to be talking about everything that the platform can do. Everything is now live as a beta that you can check out through our docs, through our YouTube, through everything. And yeah, it's really exciting. We're going to run through as many features as we can in a 1-hour stream. And I appreciate y'all for being understanding. Yeah, sorry about that. I got a DM. I always need to check my Slack DMs. Yep, I will message him. Okay, so let's just jump into it, because now that we lost a few minutes, we got to jump into it right away, right? So I've got a terminal pulled up, and I'll have the chat window off to the side so that I can answer all of your questions as soon as they come in. So let me head over to the screen share. I'm also doing this on a single laptop, so it'll be a little bit different here. Let me set up everything in the browser. There we are. So yeah, we're going to be checking out all sorts of features inside of the ambient agents setup. Gemini 3 Flash, we're trying it out for code diffs right now, and we're evaluating it as a coding model. So you may see it soon. We will see. We only ship things as soon as it passes our sniff test, but we are rolling it out for code diffs. So if you ever hit an error in Warp and we generate a fix for you, we're trying it out with Gemini 3 Flash. Before it was 2.5. So coming. Definitely coming. We're using it in the product to see how good it is. Okay, so let me show y'all what the ambient agents setup is. If you're unfamiliar with ambient agents, I'll do a little walkthrough here. So ambient agents are running Warp's coding agent in the cloud, basically. So as you interact with Warp, if you ever type in a query and then it starts saying warping, that's because it's handing off to an agent, and that agent is running in the cloud for you, it's streaming information back, and it's running off of your local file system. So anytime you do a query, it's going to have access to whatever's in your current working directory. This is great, and it's how y'all have been using Warp for a long time, but how do we expand this story so that you could trigger it from other places? Some places you might think about are if I'm in a Slack thread, and we're talking about a feature that we want to see developed, and we don't know what it's going to look like, wouldn't it be nice to kick off an agent to sort of prototype something that we can review? Or maybe you're in linear, and you just have some backlogged bug tickets that you don't have time to take care of, but you know they're small enough that they could get done in like one pass if you did it for 30 minutes. That's also something that you might hand off to an agent. But you don't really want to clone down the repo, go into that directory, set up a tab in Warp, monitor the job, and then make the pull request yourself. You would rather, for these sort of ephemeral jobs, just trigger Warp and have it run on its own. No need to open the Warp app at all. You would just say, hey Warp, can you go prototype this for me? And then we run the agent without requiring you to open your terminal. And that's what ambient agents do. They're ambient. They live in the cloud. It's like a background agent. Exactly. Yeah, we just like alliteration. Ambient agent. Doesn't that sound great? Doesn't that sound nice? Yeah. Yeah, okay, and y'all are talking about the command that you can run in order to try this out. Let me grab this, because you are exactly right, sir. If you want to run an ambient agent, you can run it by typing in warp agent. So let me not get too ahead of myself. If y'all are unfamiliar, there is a Warp CLI, and it's actually been there for a little while, maybe like a few months or so, which is a long time in AI years. And this is pre-installed if you installed Warp already. So if you're a Warp user, you have the Warp CLI. You can also install the Warp CLI separately from Homebrew or other means if you're on Linux or Windows. But as soon as you install Warp, you have the Warp command. And if you want to run commands inside of Warp, you can actually hit the tab key and get some nice autocomplete for everything that Warp can do. I love showing this off because, I mean, look at this. You get live documentation. You don't have to do -- help to see everything that exists. So we're going to try out a few of these. I'm really excited to show y'all schedule because this is like a managed cron job with absolutely no work on your part. I love this command so much. And you can manage aspects of your agents like MCP servers and the models that are available. You can also, of course, log into the platform, which you will need to do the first time you set this up. Well, actually, maybe the engineers can correct me. Do you need to log in if you're already logged into the Warp terminal? I think you need to log in, so just calling that one out. Setting up environments is something we're definitely going to talk about. We will get there, but that's basically letting the agent access a code base, and this is the way that you can configure the code base the agent has access to. And the most important command is the agent command. This is how you interact with a Warp agent in either the cloud or locally. So there are a few commands that you can run. The first one is agent run, and if you do this, this is actually going to run Warp's agent on the machine where you are running it. So when I do this, I'm actually creating an agent on my local machine. It's basically the same thing as running Warp's terminal, but headless. So instead of installing the Warp terminal, you could run this from anywhere, and it's going to do the same thing the Warp agent does, just headlessly from a CLI. So that's useful if you're like in a Linux box and you need to run things inside of there. But you also probably want to kick off a job ambiently. And for that, you can add run ambient on the end. This, instead of running it locally, is actually going to spin up a remote service that's going to run the agent inside of that. So you can actually think of it like this. When you run ambient, that's going to spin up a cloud runner, and then that cloud runner is going to run this command on your behalf. So it's taking this command, and it's putting it in a bucket in the cloud, so you don't have to manage it. And this is useful for all sorts of jobs where it doesn't have CPU resources. Like if you're, well, I think a GitHub action could actually run inside of the machine. I'd be curious how that works. But for something like Slack or Linear, you don't have access to any computing resources inside of a Slack bot, for example. So you need to kick off a job in a separate sandbox in order to support something like a Slack bot or like kicking off jobs from your own internal server. So here what I've done is I've spun up an ambient agent, and it's doing the same sort of thing. So it's going to spin up an agent now with an ambient ID, and this is the ID that you can use to track the job as it is running. And if you don't want to do any of that, let me actually show you two options. Your first option, if you want to inspect what an agent is doing, is you could do it from the CLI. So you could say, I've just kicked off an agent, and this is the ID of that agent. I want to get some more information. Well, when it finishes, we will actually give you a URL to the live session. But I believe you can also say list. I think it's task, yeah. You could do task get, and then the ID of whatever the task is. So I'm going to grab this. And if you run this command, you can get more information about that cloud runner. So you can see here it was created, here's the session link, here's the title, which is User Greeting Acknowledgement. Great name. And this session link is how you can actually watch the agent as it is running. This, I think, is the secret sauce of ambient agents that I haven't seen other people do, so watch this. When you kick off an agent in the cloud, from any service, mind you, you get back this link that lets you inspect the agent. If you click on it, it'll either open in your browser or in your Warp terminal if you already have it open, and it will show you everything that's going on inside of here. So what I'm looking at right now is not a local Warp agent. I'm actually SSH'd or connected to a cloud agent, and I'm able to interact with it the same way. So that agent that spun up in a cloud sandbox, this is all the work that it did. And I could say, now say goodbye, which is obviously very contrived, but I'm showing y'all you can interact with these agents even if your application code didn't do anything with that. So you can see here, now say goodbye, it says goodbye, and it gives you all the normal inference that you get with local agents, now for things spun up in cloud workflows, which I think is really freaking cool. Let me make sure I'm not missing any chats. I am not. At least I don't think so. Okay. I'm just making sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can also pass a name. That is true. Nice. Thanks for the tip, Ben S. I didn't know you could pass a name, but now I do. But that's a basic demo, right? You can spin up an agent, spins it up in a sandbox. You can get a link back to watch what the agent is doing, and you can interact with it. You don't have to just sit back and watch the logs, and if something fails, oh shoot, now I need to trigger the job again. No, you can interact with the job. You can actually debug and figure it out, and then refine your prompt from there. Okay, so now let's go back to where I was. I think it was here, yep. And let's talk about the other way that you can inspect jobs, and that is the Agent Management Panel. There was supposed to be reverb effect on my voice. I didn't set that up ahead of time. Agent Management Panel. If you click on this is going to show you all the jobs that you've kicked off, either locally or on a remote machine. And this is super freaking convenient. So now you kind of have this command center on the top left right here. And you can filter down to all the jobs that you've ever run. So right now I'm looking at all the jobs that I've kicked off, and I can see inside of here 2 of those jobs that I just set up. So we have the user greeting acknowledgement right here, and then the other one that we kicked off locally. And you can see the sources as well. So we see here the source of this job was a CLI, the source of this one was the API, and the source of this one was an interactive agent. Very cool. So now, if you ever need to introspect all the jobs that you're running across Warp and other places, you can go over there. What does the Cloud Agent have access to? That's a great question. So by default, if you spin up a Cloud Agent, it's just going to be an empty environment. It's just going to be a Linux box, basically. And, that can be useful for purely headless tasks like generating websites for you on the fly from nothing but a prompt. But obviously you want to do something with your own code base, probably. Maybe you have a GitHub repo or something like that. And if you wanted to have access to environments like a GitHub repository, that's where we get to environments. So let's go ahead and jump over to environments. So what I've shown you is like running an agent in the cloud, and you do it like that. But let's talk about setting it up with a coding environment. So I'm going to show y'all how you would set up an environment. Now, the process for creating an environment takes long enough that I don't think I should do it live, but I'll at least attempt. And if not, I have an environment ID that is ready to go. So let me head over to a repository here. I'm just going to pull up my personal website, maybe? That makes some sense. So maybe we could do that. And actually, no. Let me do it on Warp Internal, since I know that we have all the GitHub stuff set up for Warp Internal. So if I head over here, and I wanted to say, I want to create a coding agent. This coding agent is going to have access to Warp Internal, and it's going to be able to do coding tasks inside of Warp Internal. How do we do that? Well, you can create an environment. This is a / command that you can run inside of Warp, so / create environment, and you can list out all the GitHub repositories if you want to do it all at once, or if you just want to do it for your current working directory, you can do it like this. So right here, create environment using the current working directory, and this spins up an agent to create an environment for you. Because we thought, why create the perfect code mod when we could just ask an agent to look at your environment and figure out what the best image is going to be. So we can see here, it looks through your repo, and it's trained to look for the right things. So it's looking for the working directory. It's going to look at the tooling, so it's seeing, okay, I need to create a Docker image, because that's how our environments work. They are just Docker images. And it's figuring out, for this Docker image, I probably need Rust, right? Because this is a Rust code base. Here we are, single clear dominant language Rust. So we don't really need anything else in the environment. That sounds good. And we don't have a Docker file yet, so maybe we need to specify the version. Here are the components that our app will need. Here are some dependencies. Here's everything else. And there we go. So here is the recommended setup. If it wanted to create an environment where a coding agent could work on Warp Internal in the cloud, this is everything the Docker container would need. So it needs Rust, it needs the Debian Bookworm base. I'm not super familiar with the internals of that, but it's build essentials. I've seen Bookworm pop up a lot in Docker images. And then here's the things that should be pre-installed, so the coding agent can just run cargo check as soon as it finishes a coding task, for example. So this is everything that it needs. Does this work, or do you need a different base? I can just say, that works. It sends a confirmation step so you can review, here's everything it's going to set up in the cloud. It's fairly manual, I will admit, but we kind of wanted it that way for an initial beta, because we want y'all to see full visibility of how do these agents get configured, how do they have access to everything they need to actually do coding tasks, and how could I fix it if it goes wrong? We want to invert that control. Like, here's your Docker file that was generated. If you need to change aspects of it, you know what you're doing, then you can hop in there and do so. All right, so it's looking at the scripts. It's going to create all that stuff. This is probably the initial line that it needs to run when it sets it up. That makes sense. That sounds right. And then you can just continue on from here, which is very cool. Just going to check for questions. I think there was one. Just time travel here from 2014. Through a top secret CERN experiment, it worked. What's going on? Yeah. A lot has happened. A lot has happened in the past. Honestly, if you time traveled from January, you would be shocked at what's going on here. So there we go. An environment has been created. Amazing. And we also give you some instructions if you wanted to set this up with Slack and Linear right away. So we have two classes of integrations with ambient agents. The first class is going to be handhold, turnkey, here's how you do everything. And we have that set up for Slack and Linear right now. So if you just want a turnkey solution, give warp access to my Slack. If I ping warp from a Slack, it should be able to do tasks inside of my code base. If you want that, you can just run this command and boom, you will be able to do it from Slack. Awesome. Linear is the same way. If you want to run warp, I think it is, well, it's showing me right here, right? Warp integration, create. Yeah. And you could run it with the provider and then -- environment, the name of your environment. That's all you got to do. And that's kind of it. I'm not going to set that up because that would mess with the integrations we already have for our internal team, but that's how you would do it for a turnkey solution. Now, what I'm talking about on the other side is, what if you don't want turnkey? What if you want to set up a super custom setup where you could trigger a warp agent from anywhere? So like a GitHub action, for example, that's a pretty good one. You would need an environment in order for the GitHub action to work. Or actually, no, I don't think you need environments for that. But there are other cases, like a demo that I built, and you can find this in the docs, is an end-to-end walkthrough of building a Sentry clone, a Sentry monitor, where you could build your own server that can listen for alerts in Sentry and then spin up a cloud agent to work on those tasks. So that's something that I can show off and we can build. I can also show you sort of the granular stuff over here with the CLI, which I think I'm going to keep on doing. So yeah, that's environments. Do environments make sense to y'all? Are we feeling good about it? Gonna look at questions. We are awesome. How products and developers should be built. Well, thank you. Showing the real thing. Yeah, I'm going in depth. I'm not going to show you like broad strokes. Here's how you do it. Cut to finish solution with marketing animations. No, this is how it works. I missed the file tree panel and seeing the files themselves. Yeah. So you can definitely access the file tree in your local sessions. We're working on it for remote sessions. So he was pointing out something there where if you go into an agent session right now and you hit the side panel, I don't think we show the file tree for the remote agent. Yeah, it actually just doesn't load. That's not great. It should at least have an empty state. So let's add that. Let's add that. But you currently can't use the file tree if you're in a remote session, which is kind of a bummer. It is very convenient. But locally, if y'all aren't familiar with the file tree at all, it exists. So you can just hit the file tree button whenever you're inside of a directory and just see all the files that are inside of there, which is very cool. Okay, so this is my setup. And 1 second while I check on environment stuff. Just heading over here. Okay. Since I'm on one monitor, I'm taking breaks every couple minutes to, every like 30 minutes just to check if anyone's yelling at me in our internal Slack because, I may have leaked something without realizing. That just happens, So let me head back over to the stream. There we are. And yeah, let's take a look at this. So we're looking at, am I back to screen share? Am I back to screen share? Yes. Just making sure of that. Doop. Perfect. Let me play with my desktop a little bit. 1 second. I'm going to move y'all to a separate desktop so I can easily swipe between the two. I think that'll make life a lot easier here. So 1 second while I do that. And there we go. Perfect. Okay. So now I can quickly swipe between the two. Let me know if anything is not on the screen right now or something messed up. Working on Windows and Mac terminals, but not on our Linux terminals. We definitely have Warp shipped for Linux, so if you want to use the Warp terminal product inside of Linux, it should work. If you're running into issues that are like specific to your distro, definitely report them in the Slack community, and I will again call that out. I think it's this URL. I just totally one-shot that. Did I get that right? Nah, man. If someone can share that link, please. It's tough on a screen share to get everything right. My apologies. Okay, great. So now we're looking at this. We have our setup. We have our environment. Amazing. Now let's actually use that environment. So if you want to kick off an agent manually and you want to pass an environment, you can do -- environment and then paste in the key that is passed back to you. So here we have our environment key right here. I'm going to grab that. We shouldn't need that window anymore. And this will spin up an agent now with access to Warp Internal, which is very cool. Yes, I know I'm doing great, but it's always a tightrope walk when you're sharing your screen. Like, am I going to show something bad? It has happened in the past. I speak from experience here. So this is spinning up an agent. Here's the environment. Okay, finally. Yes. I hope that's in response to Linux and not something that I should have shown up sooner. What else? The headless agents don't support OAuth. Correct. Yes. You can use MCP servers for everything except OAuth servers, which is important if you wanted to use the Figma MCP. We agree. It's just figuring out the right handoff to do your authentication and then have the cloud agent securely access that authentication, because otherwise you'll hit issues. So let's check out this new environment. And now you can see, here's the steps that are running. So now that we've set up an environment, this is adding a Docker container to our setup, and that adds some pre-flight checks up here. So this is saying, yep, here's the Debian environment. And the important part, now it's going to clone Warp Internal automatically. So every command that I run inside of here is going to do that. And oh no, it's trying to run sudo when it probably shouldn't. That's interesting. But I could actually hand back feedback. So we set up the environment wrong. I'm actually going to ask Ben S. on this stream. If I set up an environment and something's wrong with that environment, do we have a way to patch environments, or do I need to create a new one? Because the one time I ran into this, I made a new one. I'm just going to check if there's a way to patch it. Any support for Bitbucket? I'm not sure. I would think that when we set up the environment, we use GitHub commands by default. And if you want to set it up with something else, you would need to modify the Docker file. But you could. You absolutely could. So if I go in here, environment update. Okay, great. So if I wanted to fix this environment, what would I do? I'm probably just going to use one of our ready-made environments, but that's good to know. If you ran environment update, what would that take? What would that actually do? Would you just run environment update inside of your current directory? Like, where do I run that? Let me hop into Warp Internal again and see what's going on. Projects, Warp Internal, lovely. And I think this created a Docker file, right? If I look at it and I try to open Docker, did it create a Docker file for me? I actually don't know. Could you move your picture up so we can see the newest chats? Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm probably covering it with my face. So, I mean, you can look at it in YouTube Live as well. But let me see here. I think what I can do is I can pop you out. Look at that. So now we have our chat. It's over here. Lovely. And then we're going to do that. There you go. Solved. Okay, I'm just going to leave the environment alone, but there is a command to do it. So let's continue. Let's continue with our features. So now we've shown off using an environment. That works. Let me show off either cron jobs or SDK. Cron jobs or SDK. Let's start with cron jobs because those use the CLI, and then we'll talk about our TypeScript SDK to trigger warp agents. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, crons. This is something that's built into Warp. This is really freaking cool. So there's this feature now called schedule. And when you set up schedule, you can actually schedule a job to run on an interval. Exactly the same way you do cron jobs with GitHub Actions, you can just do a fully managed solution with Warp. So let me show you how that works. If you set up a schedule, here are some of the commands. You can create a schedule using a cron string. And you can also manage your schedule by doing all this stuff. So you can pause and unpause scheduled events. You can update events. You can, of course, get help. Or you can list out all the events that you currently have. I'm going to start here just to show you all what that looks like. So internally in Warp, we have a few things that are scheduled right now. And as you can see, there are definitely duplicates because we tested this thing a ton before we shipped, and there's some cleanup to do. But you can see that there are also ways to pause it and such. But this is what a schedule looks like. So you can create a job, which is just an agent. You can give it a name, which is something that we require for cron specifically. You can set up a schedule. This is using a cron string, and I'll explain how that works. But this job, for example, is going to run at the top of every day at the start of the week. So indexing from 0. This means every Monday at the top of the hour, or at the top of the day, I want you to run this feature flag cleanup job. And it's going to have a prompt built into it in order to run something for you, which is very cool. So we can see right here, here's the next run that's going to happen. Here's the scope. So if you create a job, it can either be scoped to your entire team. If you have a team account with Warp and you have a bunch of people using it, you can set up crons for everyone to access, or you can set it up as a personal job, which is if you're on a team of 1, or you just want to set up something that others can't access. So you can see all of that is set up here. We can also see the last run down here, which is very cool. So it's like this really nice command center. So you can schedule jobs and see what's going on. Instead of like bolting this onto your GitHub action setup, we manage it for you, which I think is pretty freaking cool. So let me show you how you would create a scheduled job. So you can run warp schedule create, and you can see this is the one that I created previously in my command history. Let's go ahead and accept that so I can show you the anatomy of one of these. So you can call -- name. We're going to call it remove stale feature flags, which you can see I tested out earlier. Here's the cron schedule. So this is the same way you set up crons in GitHub Actions. And to explain how the string works, this is the minute that it runs. This is the hour that it runs. This is, I think, the month and the day of the month. I might be getting that backwards. I think this is the day of the month if you want to use a specific day of the month. This is like the month that it runs on. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's right. And then the last one is the day of the week. And index from 0. 0 is Sunday. 1 is Monday. And you can do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. So I set up this job to run at 10 p.m. Central Time. So it's not like localized to your time zone. You got to sort of do the math there. But this would run like 10 on Greenwich time. And this would run every Monday, and the prompt is as follows. This is something that I set up to remove stale feature flags from the Warp internal code base, because this is something pretty much everyone deals with at some point. As your application scales, and you have feature flags that you turn on and off for users, there are a lot of them that just kind of stick around, because you want to run it for like a few months. You always want the optionality to turn off a feature if it's going wrong. But at a certain point, it's just tech debt, right? Like if you have a feature flag that's more than 3 months old, 6 months old, a year old, it should probably be removed so that your code gets a little bit cleaner. You don't have to wonder, is that flag still relevant? Do I need to add that to this new code that I'm writing? It kind of becomes a virus that you need to get on top of. So right here is how you would set that up. So I'm creating a prompt. It's saying, look at all the feature flags for more than 3 months. Here's where they are defined. So this is some information about Warp internal. You heard it here first. The source code has leaked. We have a features RS file. Now you can build Rust yourself. There we go. Okay, so this is where all the feature flags live. Here's the recommended procedure. You may not need this much detail, but we provided it anyways. This is saying use git blame to figure out when those feature flags were committed. Look at the enabled features. Look at the ones that are really old. And this is something that I decided to do, and this is different from what we're running internally. I might make a PR for this, but I've said create a planning document to put all of this stuff. If y'all don't know, Warp has planning documents, and we've had them for a long time, as in 3 weeks. And a planning document is this useful sort of memory dump that an agent can use as it's working or after it's done a job so that he can extend it later. And I've been using planning documents as just like, remember things while you're working. And it also helps me if I go into the job and look at what it did, I can review the planning document to see all the feature flags that I decided to remove. So cool. So I used a planning document here. And then I say, look at the remaining features, follow our pull request template, which we should probably just prompt it to do, but I'm putting it here. And only remove the oldest one is something that I've said in here. Otherwise, the PR would be ridiculously huge the first time we run this. So I was like, just remove one of them. How about that? Planning documents are indeed great. You should be using them as much as you can. And you don't need a planning mode. That's the nice thing about Warp is you don't have to like enable planning to create a planning document. You can just say it somewhere in your prompt and it will do it. That's it. As long as the prompt gestures towards a planning document, it will do it. Otherwise, it will not. We made sure it wasn't too trigger happy. Okay, so that's the full setup. And if I run this, this is a nice little feature, by the way. I wish we had this for all of our commands, but we do it for scheduler, where you get a nice little select box to select your environment. So we can see all the ones that we have set up for our Warp team. And the Warp dev environment is the one that we just created. Either that or it's the old one, but they're the same sort of thing. So I could select this, and it would wire in an environment for me to use. So now you scheduled an agent called this. Here's the schedule ID. And now if we run, there's a good suggestion, warp schedule list, it should show this new feature flag cleanup. Nice. So it's not paused. Last run was here. I've scoped it to the team by default. And our next run is going to be on Monday, as I mentioned there. Very cool. Just reviewing the chat. What does pricing look like for these ambient agents? Yes. So pricing is using add-on credits. That's how we set this thing up. So it's not going to use your personal credit pool. So if you're on like the build plan, it's not going to eat up your build credits. It's just using add-on credits. So you'll need to have like a bundle of add-on credits, and then the agent will have access to that. That's how we're doing it for the initial beta. Of course, pricing is not something that like is set in stone forever. We're open to feedback on this stuff since it's very new. But we said the safest way to roll this out, use add-on credits. So you buy like a credit pack separate from your personal usage, and that's what the agent will have access to. And if you go over, you can set it up to auto refill or not, depending on what you prefer. Happy to be here. Yes. Yes. Amazing. So you can plan, exec, review. Yes. We love plans. We love plans. Okay. Now, if we wanted to set up this job to run right away, it would be cool if we could actually trigger a job ahead of time, but I don't think we have that yet. So you have a couple options. One would be to run the ambient agent directly. So if I wanted to run this job to see what it will look like, I could replace schedule create with agent run ambient. And it's otherwise the same difference. You would remove the cron job, and this would just one-shot it. And I believe you will need the environment ID if you do that. So let me grab the environment ID right here. Can I grab that? Yes. Okay. -- environment. Like that. So this is going to do like a test run, just to make sure of everything. Cool. Okay. Oh, no. I messed up something. Invalid resource. Oh, no. Okay, so that's not the ID. Did I mess up? Let me see. Oh, gosh. What's the easiest way to do this without borking myself? Let me think. We have all this. Y'all, we should make it easier to just trigger a cron. I left feedback. We're working as hard as we can. So let me, 1 second, while I go to Facecam and make sure I don't leak environment details, because that would be bad. So let me run warp environment list separately. That's a pretty sensitive command, warp environment list. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you're on your local machine, which is what I'm doing right here. So I'm going to grab that environment so we can keep going here. 1 second while I get it. Okay, warp dev environment. Yeah, that looks right. Interesting. Okay. I got it. It'll just take a second. So let's grab that. Here's that. I'm heading back to my job. Over here. Aha! I deleted a character by accident. That explains it. Okay. I think we're back. I think we are so back. Sweet. Okay. So now y'all can see that agent that has been triggered. We can see here it is spawning an agent just to test this out so I can show y'all how it works. So that's going to spin up a ambient agent with a task ID. And once again, if you ever want to look at your jobs, you can go to the agent management panel and it'll be over here. And this is for everyone, so we can just see what's going on. That's going to be the source API that we just triggered, I believe. So we can see that right there. It spawned an ambient agent with a task ID. And it does take a moment to spin up, obviously. And once it does, you'll have a session link to see what's going on. So yeah, that's cron jobs. I hope that seems cool to y'all. So it's really no different than an ambient agent, except we manage the scheduling for you. So you don't have to manage infrastructure yourself to run agents on a specific time interval. We will manage that for you. And you can look at the management panel to see all of your jobs and everything that's going on. And if you want to see if this job actually works, sure enough, here it is. So we have the environment that's set up. It's going to clone warp internal. And it's going to remove some feature flags. Now, I don't want us to stall and wait for this forever, so I'm going to hop over to demoing the TypeScript SDK, and we'll check back in on this guy once I set up the environment as well. I want to make sure it actually works. Oh, it's going to clone warp server as well? Well, that's all right. Okay, cool. So let's do that, and let's talk about the SDK. I want to talk about this because it's a very cool feature. this is my reference that I may need to go to just to make sure everything's set up. But I have a basic environment here to show y'all how you can set things up with the SDK. So we released this just a day ago, and it's working on both TypeScript and Python. So if you're using Python, you can just import an ambient agent in there. If you're using TypeScript, which is what I'm going to use today, since I'm more comfortable in TypeScript, it should work with type safety as well. So let me show you how it works. I'm going to install it. It's just a dependency. You can install the Warp Agent SDK like that. It's called Warp Agent SDK. I believe the Python package has the same name, but it should be in our documentation, so you can go check over there. And I'm also going to install a couple things here. So I'm going to install TypeScript and TSX, just so we can run a TypeScript file easily inside of this directory. Cool. Now I'm going to just create an example file, right? So example.ts, and we're going to see how this works. And I'm using Warp to edit the file, because why not? So here's how you can do that. By the way, if you're confused, like, whoa, you can open files in Warp? You can. If you hit Command-O, you can open one of these files. You can also do that from the file tree. So if I click on the file tree, oh, it didn't refresh. Gosh dang it. I think if I do git init, it'll refresh it correctly. How about now? I'm right. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to edit this example file right here. And we're just going to see how it works. So you can import Warp SDK. Warp API, I think, is how we document it. Warp Agent SDK. And you can set up your environment by creating a client. So you can call client. You can create a new Warp API object. And that's all you need to do to start running an agent. Now, I'm going to do a couple things. Because I've set up my environment inside of our staging environment, I'm going to add a special environment flag that y'all probably won't need. But I'm also going to add pretty important... well, let me just grab the reference. This is the reference. And there's a full YouTube video explaining how this stuff works. I'm kind of just pulling from it live so that y'all can see how it looks. Okay. That's not right. My Vim motions. Okay. There we are. Okay, so we have, first off, the API key. So you will need a Warp API key in order to use inside of your application code, which should make sense, right? I mean, you all have set up environment keys before. You can do it from your Warp settings inside of the platform panel. You can just create an environment key right in there, and then you can paste it inside of a .env file. By default, we're going to pull this in, so you don't need this. But if you want to configure the name of the environment variable to something other than Warp API key, this is your entry point to do so. We also have the base URL. This is something that I'm using to connect to our staging environment. You don't need this. You can just run it without a base URL and it should work fine. Okay, cool. So now we have our client set up. And if you want to kick off an agent, you can call client agent run. This is going to work exactly the same way as the Warp CLI. So you'll notice there's some parity here. In the CLI, you ran warp agent run. And in here, you also run warp.agent.run. So as soon as you learn the CLI, the SDK should hopefully feel intuitive to you. So we can see here, client run, and you can pass in a prompt. And it really is that simple. So you can just say prompt, hey there, and that's it. And now we've run this from application code. How about that? Yes, you can bring your own key. You can absolutely bring your own key. We support Claude and OpenAI and Vertex right now, and we are looking at more providers shortly, but we wanted to cover all the major bases. So if that's you, then you can use it inside of Warp. Okay, so we've set that up, and now I'm just going to run it. Let's see what happens. So hopefully I get all my commands right. Otherwise, I'm just going to reference what I have. So let me do pnpm tsx, and the environment file is the .env that I have set up quietly because I don't want y'all to see my environment keys. And then I'm going to run example.ts, and that should work great. Oh no, really? That is surprising. Wait, what? I swear I have an environment file. Did it go away? No, it's right here. Huh? That doesn't seem right. I think my issue is just the quotation marks. I think that's it. No, that's not it. I'm thinking here. What do I need to do? All right, I'm going to figure this out. Is Gemini covered? Yes. Yes, if you use Vertex, that will work. Open router is definitely being tracked. Don't worry about that. Okay. I need to figure out why this isn't running. Oh, no. Well, I do have my example over here, so I can just run this one. But, that seems strange. Let me grab my package JSON, because I think the issue might be in there. Oh, we don't even have a package JSON. That doesn't seem right. Did I accidentally install in the wrong place? No, I didn't. Wait, how did we install without a package JSON? The plot thickens. I think I initted in the wrong directory. Maybe that's it. Oh my gosh, I think it is. All right, so let me install again. I think this is my issue. Let's try that. And then we're going to install Warp Agent SDK again. That's probably what's going on, right? And then I'm going to open it. Yes. Okay, great. And touch.getIgnore. And we're just going to put our node modules in there to get rid of the noise. There we are. And there we are. All right, now we should be good. So let me run scripts example, and this command is just going to be tsx-m file equals .env, and then the example.ts file that we have. How about that? Okay, better. I think, yep, and I know that error. I know how to fix that one. Okay. Type. No. Okay. Type. Module. That should do that. Now we should be good. Amazing. Okay, so this kicked off an agent in the cloud, and I should be able to inspect it from the agent management panel. Bit of a leap of faith, but yes, I'm right. Okay, so that was a local agent that we just ran, and then this is our first agent that we ran from the API. So we can see in our agent management panel all the stuff that is going on whenever we trigger it from anywhere, including application code. Want to call that out because I think y'all will be using this a lot when you're debugging everything that's going on inside of Warp. So as soon as you kick off a runner from anywhere, including your TypeScript code, you will see it appear inside of here. And you can hop in, you can click into sessions if that session is set up currently. This is cowboying some code, yes. Local setup is typically absorbed. Yeah, I know. You also prompt for generating code that uses the SDK. I can, but I come from a long line of teaching people how to code physically, like actually typing things out. So I just wanted to actually show y'all the code writing it out. But we could, of course, ask Warp, hey, make a super nice looking SDK for us. You can go either way. All right, so now look at that. It ran, and we can go into the session right here. Conversation was a greeting. No further action required. Task complete. Love that. Okay, cool. What is going on here? Oh, this is our agent from earlier. Well, sorry, I don't want to jump to that just yet. I don't want to lose the plot. But it looks like our agent that we spun up in the background for that cron job was really good. It's actually running and working. We love that. Okay, so that's how you kick it off from the cloud. There you go. VMs are king. Yes, it is a virtual machine. It is a virtual machine. Okay, so now let's actually do something useful, right? So we've set this up to just do a response, do all the stuff. Nothing super interesting there. Let me show you this job right here. And we're not going to be able to build the full Sentry integration. I'm just going to be showing you it because it's just so involved. You can watch my walkthrough video where we actually build it. But this is an example right here where we're passing off an actual stack trace that came from Sentry. So this is an error in a Golang server that said there was a nil pointer dereference, which if you've used Golang, you have seen this error countless times. We see it a lot working on our own backend. And so I was like, can we set up a job that can actually watch for nil pointer exceptions and fix them? So you can see here, here's an example of that kind of prompt. Here's a stack trace that came from Sentry. Here's the environment ID so that it can clone down a repository. And then we can actually kick it off. So let me copy this prompt so I can show you it doing something actually useful. So I can copy that. I can head back to our sandbox over here. And I can make this multi-line, like so. Cool. You are a helpful assistant. We love it. Okay. So this is going to spin up a new worker that now has a useful prompt. And as you can see right here, you can configure an environment. This is the same environment that we've been talking about for the CLI. You also need an environment ID if you're standing something up from your TypeScript code. So this environment ID is set up for a Golang environment. So this is a backend server that I created, and I created an environment for that backend server. So now, as soon as the agent kicks off, it will have access to my backend server's code, and that's what the environment contains. So there you go. And if we want some more feedback, I've also written some code to actually show us some stuff. So first off, inside of this panel, and let me maximize it. Maximize pane, love that. So over here we have agent started, here's a task ID, and then this is a polling function. I'm debating if we should build this in to our TypeScript SDK because it's so useful, but the point of it is to watch the task and wait for it to be in progress, because once a task is in progress, we'll be able to get the session link and show it to you so that you can click into it and actually look at what it's doing. So this is a polling function that I've written. Okay, Opus wrote this for me, but you know how it is. We don't always have to write our own code. And this polling function is just going to, every second, look at the status of the job, see if it's in progress, and if so, log out a session link so that we can click through and see what the agent is doing. We can, of course, do this from the agent management pane, so you don't need to do that. But if you wanted the session link to send it back, for example, like maybe you want to send off a Slack message as soon as an agent is running, and that Slack message needs to contain the session link, so that way you can join it from that Slack message. This is how you would do it. You would listen for the state to change, and as soon as it's ready, you would click through and look at it. So there you go. Yeah, it's very low level. The only complaint people have about this is like, hey, that's stuff I have to write. But these days, coding agents are free, so like, yeah, you got to write some manual code, but that gives you so much control. Like, you have the Docker image. You can edit the Docker file. You have access to the state of the machine, so you can do things as the machine walks through the states. It's very cool. Oh, and I think I also need to do something with that data. So I made a function, but I don't think I called it. Example.ts, look at that. Cool. So this is going to kick it off, and then the session link. Great. I think this should work. So let me run pm example, and this time you'll notice it's just going to hang a little bit as it's waiting for that task to come through. So now we can see it's kicked off, and now it's saying polling. So here are the states that it goes through. First, it's queued. It's waiting for Warp to pick it up. Then it's claimed, which means that a runner has claimed the job, and it's going to start working on it. And as soon as the claimed job actually starts running in the cloud, this will transition to in progress and give us a session link. So there we are, in progress, view agent session. There you go. And if you were writing an application, this is kind of what it would do. It would wait for the session link, maybe it would trigger a notification in Slack so that you can join the session yourself, and clicking through, here's the job, look at that. So this is what my environment told it to do. It's cloning down this Git repo, it's going through all the setup, and it's running this command. And now it's going to go ahead and fix it. So it's able to identify right away, here's the file, script.go, let me go ahead and fix that. And then it can access your GitHub and do PRs. Very cool. Okay. That's it. That's really all there is to it. You can start up a job from TypeScript doing that. I'm going to click in here just to see what's going on. You can see right there, inspected, the crash is from a null pointer error. Yep. Okay. If this is a Sentry demo trigger. Okay, because it's an intentional demo, it decided it's actually fine, which is a fair take. But I could ask it, I want to prevent this nil dereference from ever occurring. And this is the cool aspect, right? Like, you can continue the task locally if you kicked it off from the cloud. You can interact with it while it's in the cloud and give it feedback. This is what's different compared to a background agent, is you can bring it to the foreground and ask it to do things. So here we go. Now it fixed it. Prevent the nil pointer deref. It's doing that. We love it. And I don't think there's really anything in the Go test, but it can do that too. Okay, let me check chat, because I did show off a lot of things just then. So it's up to you to keep track of each environment is set up for. Yes. So there are commands to look at your environments. I'm not running them because I don't want to leak all of our environments. I notice there's some sensitive info when you do that. But let me show you at least. So you can run warp environment list. And this would give you all the information about your environments. You can also get a specific environment to know more about it. You have all the CRUD operations on here. So you could also update an existing cloud environment if you wanted to. So you have ways to introspect. They're not just off in the ether somewhere. If you detach from the job in warp, does it continue and let you connect later? I'm curious what you mean by detach. Because, what do you mean by detach? Because I'll at least explain what we can do. When you kick off a cloud job, it's going to run in a cloud runner. When you join the session link, you are SSHing into that box. You're not running it locally. And as soon as the job is done, which, okay, we'll actually look at that one in a second, you're able to continue the task locally. And as soon as you do that, it would clone it back into your local directory, assuming you're CD'd into it, and then you can interact with it from there. But I don't think you can go from local back to remote, because it's kind of like a one-time thing. Like, you can interact with the remote session as much as you want, but as soon as you clone it locally, that's kind of like dumping the conversation context into a local environment. It doesn't destroy the remote version. It's kind of just like a one-off action that you can do and then go back, but that's kind of what it means. I mean, if you end the warp session, well, the session sticks around for a bit, so it's not like as soon as the task is done, the session completes, or as soon as I close this window, it's gone forever. It just kind of sticks around. So yeah, with a reasonable time frame. We do have some sort of, we do have some point where we clear out old sessions. It's kind of like when you generate a preview link on Vercel. When you generate a preview of your website, the link sticks around within reason. And then at some point, the preview URL just goes away because no one was looking at it. I'd be curious what we exactly do to decide that, but I know the session sticks around for a while. Like, if I go into my management panel and I scroll down, I can look at this one from a day ago, and it's still here. It's still here. This is a job someone else kicked off, and I can just look at it because we're on the team account. So yeah, sessions stick around. LS, when you CD a folder automatically, just to know where you are. I may need to scroll up for more context on that. Raise your IQ 15 to 30 points. I don't know how true that is. We need to test the SWE-bench numbers on that. I don't think SWE-bench reports IQ points, but we can totally request that from them. Would it be possible to create a voice filter in Warp? Sure, I don't know. You can do whatever you want. If you're thinking like building a voice filter for OBS, yeah, you could build an OBS plugin using Warp, and that would work. If you don't know what OBS is, it's the recording software that I am using to live stream to you right now. That's probably what I would do first, is I would download OBS, which is open source, and then I would ask to make a plugin that filters my voice, and then I would pass it through. Maybe. I don't know. What is the lifetime of these agents? That's what I just shared. You're only billed for tokens. You're not billed for like a VM sitting around. That is absolutely not a thing. Because we've also partnered with someone that can make sure the cost goes to zero as soon as the VM isn't doing anything. So no worries about that. If you detach from the job in Warp, does it continue and let you connect later? Yes, we talked about that. And this may be an idiot question, but can I set up my Warp to not use Vim environment when editing the code? I don't know Vim. I don't know why it's using... So what do you mean by not use a Vim environment? Because it shouldn't be using Vim to edit code. It should just be editing the file directly, as we see in this file diff here. If you're seeing it like open a Vim file and edit from there, that's a little weird. I think the only places where you might see Vim motions pop up is for certain Git commands. Like if you do a Git rebase, it might pull up a Vim editor, but that's the only time. Otherwise, it definitely shouldn't be doing that. If you have an issue there, join the Slack community and report it, because I'm curious what's going on there. Yeah. Check the settings and set export. Editor. Oh, do you mean like when you open a file? Interesting. Yeah, it's Command O to open a file. And we're also working on a slash command to do it as well, because we realized, yeah, it should be possible to just do like slash edit. Oh, we didn't ship it yet, yeah. Like slash edit file path, you know? Like that should work. So we're working on that. That may not be the final API, but something like that, so you can access it a little bit easier. How long is this ad? How long is this ad? What do you mean? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I am streaming on Twitch using my personal account. Indeed. Just for a bit more reach, because a lot of people in my audience are actually willing to listen. They're actually curious about it. It's meant to be, we're talking about Warp today, and hopefully the Twitch title describes that effectively. Maybe he meant that he's ending up with Vim key bindings. Maybe. You can definitely disable that in your Warp settings. I don't know. Yeah. What's going on here? Was the keyboard shortcut used? Yep, we talked about that. I don't think there were any other questions, because we are hitting the end of this stream, but I do want at least to leave a little bit of room. And we can also look at this job, by the way, the one that we kicked off way earlier. So this was the feature flag job that we ran on a cron job. And here's the list of all the feature flags that it found. Very cool. So it found the candidate to remove out of all of this thing. Remove terminal full opacity. We love that. And it looks like, and I ran into this before, where the cargo check didn't finish all the way. I want to make sure what's going on with that with the team. Because I did tell it to create a PR, and it got stuck at the build process. So I'm going to check on them to see what's going on with that. But it did, at the very least, do a decent job, I think. So if I click on that, I can jump up. And then it removed terminal full opacity across all these files. So yeah, it did the right code change. It just wasn't able to get to the last mile and do the pull request. Very curious about what's going on there. But you can continue it locally if you want. So I could just continue locally and see what's going on here. And it looks like it also, yeah, it creates a prompt so that it knows it's in a different environment now. Cool. So yeah, what's Slack link? Yeah, totally. If you're looking for the Slack community, you can find it on warp.dev. So let me open my browser window and head over to warp.dev/docs. Head over here. And I think, actually, if I just go to warp like that, you should be able to find it from here. So if I do resources, do we do community? Shoot. Yeah, where do we put it? It should be, man, I can't remember. I know if I Google warp community Slack, it does come up. Let me try that. Yeah. No. Well, that's silly. We should make it way more prominent. I don't know why we don't have it inside of resources. Either that or I'm just reading through it way too quickly. Maybe it's contact. Sales, chat. Bleh. All right, so I think I should have this. 1 second while I switch over to Facecam and make sure of where this is. I feel silly. Let me see. Okay, I found it. Yeah, it's this link right here. I was getting it wrong earlier. This is it. Yep. And it looks like we're getting some help with that, so that's great. I use KDE for my personal OS, so whenever I edit a file, I was using the Vim editor. Okay. Yeah, that's a little outside of my understanding, KDE, because I haven't set that up myself. But we can definitely figure that one out. Yeah. So if you join over there, you can just leave like feedback if you want. Otherwise, we can fix it right here. What of your recent programs you built with Warp you found amazing, and why? Well, this feels, I don't know. I don't want to get too silly. But what have I found amazing? I don't know. Usually it's environment setup. Like I was amazed recently where I was just, and this is like old school Warp. If you're ever using Warp to work on stuff, you've probably tried it to like get you out of a bind with your Docker environment or something. But I've been switching over to Opus with like a rule to communicate with very brief English, and I've found that Opus is really good at answering a question in a single pass with very few words. So like I know Opus is so expensive and you don't want to use it for too many things, but it's way smarter about token use compared to Sonnet because it doesn't bump its head against a bunch of walls. It just kind of gets it. So I've been amazed using Opus. Like recently, I had a problem with my Xcode setup where it just wasn't building the Warp app correctly, and it got to the bottom of it in like a single pass and 5 tokens. And I was like, holy crap, that was insane. It normally would have taken like 30, 40 tokens and a bunch of debugging and bad answers that might mess up my environment, but it just got it. So I was like, that's cool. But yeah, also the cron scheduling has been very cool. The fact that we have crons built in, very happy about that. Yeah. Can an ambient agent also run the code? And when it's a website, connect to it? If you set up an MCP server, you could. You can have it build a website, use the Playwright MCP to connect to the dev server as soon as it runs it, and then try to do stuff inside the browser. That would be my suggestion if you wanted to set this thing up. And you don't need auth to do that, so I think all of that should work. I would just have to go build it to be 100%, but that's what I would try to do. And I don't know what issue you're hitting there with the email address. I'm guessing that's Did you hit that signing up for the Slack community or when you were logging into the CLI? Because if it's logging into the CLI, go report it in the Slack community, and then we'll fix it over there. Because that should work. Otherwise, you should run the logout command just to make sure. Or you might have a Warp account already sitting out in the ether, and you may need to change the email on that account, which is a fun process. Yes. Okay, well, now that we've hit the top of the hour, I think I'm going to end this stream, but hopefully this was useful to y'all. I definitely encourage you to go check out Warp Ambient, and I will show you a few resources that I would recommend. I spent, and also Hong Yi and our new copywriter Rachel, shout out to all of you for spending time on these resources, because it's not like a beta launch with 2 lines of documentation in a dream. We have tutorials. So let me show y'all where we have those. Here's the first one that I'll point y'all to. If you want to see the SDK used a little bit more in depth, you can go over here. And this is a tutorial we put together to set up a Sentry monitor end-to-end. So this would actually create a server that listens for Sentry events on a webhook, and then trigger the coding agent whenever a Sentry webhook fires. It's really freaking cool. I recommend it. Just to understand what you could actually do with the SDK. And we also have a GitHub action tutorial. You can find that one pretty easily. And we have our SDK walkthrough, but y'all got the rundown on this stream. And cron scheduling. You can also find that on our docs. But that's the resource I'd point you to if you want to go a little bit deeper. Do you need an invite? That shouldn't be right. So what's going on there? So you tried to join the preview and it wouldn't let you in? Is that the issue? You should be able to just click this link and join it. But if not, definitely let us know. The Slack link is not correct. Not again. All right, let me message the growth team. 1 second. And I'm just going to ping a couple people that would know how to set this up. Yep, we have a lot of people out for the holidays, so it'll take me a second. Shoot. I'm sorry. It would not let you in. That is wrong. That's the problem with the Slack communities. We have to bump capacity every once in a while. Every once in a while, we wonder if we should have gone with Discord. We also do have a Discord, but the Slack is what we tend to check more often. So, tough. Let me see if I can generate my own link. 1 second while I do that. Can I create a link? Invite people. Copy invite link. Okay. Well, I just created a copy link. Let's try this one. If y'all use this, it should be able to get you in, and we'll be working on that redirect link shortly. Yep. So try that. See how it's working. If you go to the link, you will see the problem. I will not because I'm logged in, actually. But let me double check. If I do it in an incognito tab, I'm sure I'll be able to see it, right? So let's go to incognito and check that out. It tells me I can just join the... Oh. Okay, so it's... Ooh. That makes sense. Yeah, it's restricted to warp.dev. That's not right. Does that link work or no? This works? Great. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So anyone in the audience wondering, there is your link. Otherwise, you can... You'll be able to use that go.warp.dev as soon as we fix that link for you. It's annoying. I wish it didn't work that way. Okay. We'll fix that. But yeah, anyone in the audience who wants to join our Slack community, go over there. That's where we try to collect all the community feedback as y'all are building stuff with this setup. And cool, that means y'all are joining as well. Love that. I will highlight on the Warp community, it's a little bit more lively than it used to be. So now we have like an announcements channel that's popping off. We've got feedback channels where people are sharing stuff daily. We also have a How Do You Warp channel. And this is a new one that we're trying to make a little bit more lively. So if you ever do something in Warp and you want to share it, go to the How Do You Warp channel and you'll be a part of that as soon as you join the Slack community. We're having people like who work at Warp, our engineers, sharing our workflows inside of here so that y'all can try them out yourself. But we also want the community to share stuff in here. So let's get a flywheel going. Why not? Yeah. Does it support GCP logging? Sure. It supports anything that you want to do. You should be able to make bash programs as well as using the SDK. So you can totally do that as well. I will admit our Discord is not something that our engineers are actively checking. That's why I recommend the Slack community, because our engineers tend to be more responsive over there. But if you just hate Slack, like I will not use Slack, it's against my religion, let me grab a link to our Discord. I'll also set up some like Raycast hotkeys after this. That should help. Okay, so let me double check that this link works. This is it, yes. So yeah, if Discord is your religion, you can go over there. But I do try to prefer the Slack community. It doesn't work? What happened? Did it already hit capacity or something like that? I'm unfamiliar. I do hate Slack. Well, that's fine. You can definitely join the Discord if that's all you're going to use. That's fine. That's why we got both. Actually, it added it to Slack, but I can't go into it. I don't know what that means. And now I am in. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, now that everyone's set up and good to go, I'm going to end the live stream here. Glad y'all found it useful. Definitely check out our documentation for all the ambient agent stuff. Going to plug it again, just in case y'all want to look at it. Just go to the overview page, and you'll be able to find all sorts of demos and stuff over there. And ask questions. Get engaged. I want to see y'all building cool stuff with Warp Ambient Agents. So, yeah. Glad I could stream for y'all today. And I hope to see y'all on the next one. We're going to be trying to do these once a week, apart from next week, which is Christmas. But after that, you'll be seeing me around the Warp channel a little bit more. So, tune in. I will see y'all next time.